It's rare.
This is a powerful wind, enough to knock over a tree.
It's unique.
2 more steps.
It's Mother Nature at her strangest.
I pretty well had decided I wasn't going to survive.
These are the stories from people who work in extreme weather.
Oh, we just lost a big window.
It was just like a bomb went off.
And nobody is coming to save you.
And the storms they'll never forget.
Wham! Crack! Bang! Bang! Bang!
Holy we're going to die.
Plus, the how and why behind the world's worst weather.
Mother Nature is one mother.
Mother Nature can dish out some strange weather. These phenomena may be explained by science, but sometimes are so rare they cannot be explained at all. Volcanoes trigger some of the strangest weather on the planet, as was the case on a small remote island called Ambro.
Ambrim volcano is in Vanuatu in the southwest Pacific. And Ambrim is very special because it doesn't have a lake of water, it has a lake of lava. That lava lake is somewhere between 1,100 degrees Celsius and 1,200 degrees Celsius. You do not want to fall into that lake. You do not want to take a swim into that lake because you will dissolve. Think of the Earth as an egg, and the eggshell is the crust, the white of the egg is the mantle, and the yellow part is the core. The mantle is the part of the Earth underneath the crust, which is relatively thin, and magma, which eventually gets out onto the surface as lava, ultimately comes from the mantle, not from the core, but from the mantle. So why do some volcanoes erupt all the time, and why do some volcanoes erupt intermittently and go back to sleep and so forth? Has to do with the nature of the plumbing system. So a volcano that's erupting all the time must have a well-established plumbing system between the mantle and the surface, which is a pretty amazing thing, actually.
An active volcano emits gases, and when these gases collide with Mother Nature, the result is a strange weather phenomenon called acid rain. The results can be deadly, especially for the brave few who dare to venture inside the heart of the volcano.
My name is George Karunas. I'm a professional explorer and storm chaser. I've spent the past 20 years exploring the most extreme places on Earth, from the most ferocious weather to erupting volcanoes. I've been fascinated with volcanoes since I was a little kid. You can stand on a volcano and see the lava coming out of it and understand civilization as we know it could be wiped out because of a very large eruption.
Oh, standing up to the edge, unbelievably hot. It just burns your face, burns your ears. With the protection on, I can stand there, but without it, I can feel the heat just from here, and it's unbelievably hot.
I have melted my boots on volcanoes. I have had to dodge pieces of lava flying through the air. I just can't get enough of them. In August 2014, I was part of an expedition that brought us to the island of Ambrim with the goal of not just going and visiting the volcano, but to descend 1,200 feet down inside. There's only 5 places in the world where these lakes of lava exist. And I thought for years that I would never get the opportunity to go there because it's too difficult, it's too dangerous, it's too expensive, but I was finally able to fulfill that dream.
But for George, a sudden change in weather would quickly turn that dream into a nightmare.
I thought I'd seen it all. I got a little more than I bargained for.
On a volcano, there are gases being emitted all the time. And when those gases interact with rainwater, the rainwater becomes acidic, extremely acidic, because the gases that are being emitted from the volcano are highly acid in nature.
All right, gentlemen, let's get suited up.
At the top of the volcano, George and his lava chasing team prepare for a thrilling but highly dangerous adventure.
There's 100% uncertainty on every step of this expedition. At the summit of that volcano, there's very little chance of any kind of assistance or rescue. And there's a constant cloud of gas nearby. If there's any type of rain happening or even the chance of rain, we won't even bother trying to descend down, because once you begin that process, you're locked in.
To ascend quickly from craters and out of danger, climbers often carry a specialized piece of equipment.
Hook this one on.
The most important piece of equipment, a device called an act safe, which is a gasoline-powered rope ascender. Think of it as a lawnmower engine that you clip to your climbing harness. You can then thread your rope through it, pull it to start it. It has a throttle, and it will act like your own personal elevator to pull you up to get you out of the crater. Without it, you're in big trouble.
I think that's an interesting thing.
This one piece will make 52 layers.
Watch on mobile devices or the big screen. All for free. No subscription required. Download Veely now.
The crater itself is 1,200 feet deep. That's deeper than the Empire State Building is tall. So imagine having to rappel down almost a straight cliff with a pool of boiling lava below you.
Looks good. Good? All right, let's do this. Into the furnace.
His backpack loaded with safety gear,
See you boys later.
George begins his descent into the jaws of the crater.
I had done a fair amount of rappelling inside volcanoes already, but this was my deepest rappel. So I was a little nervous. That first overhang is a bit intimidating because it's a straight drop, about 300 feet. You can smell the volcano, and every now and then, the wind will blow. You'll feel a little bit of the heat on your face, even though it's still several hundred meters away. And you look over your shoulder, and there's the glowing pit of lava right behind you. A little bit at a time, descend a little bit at a time. It takes several hours to rappel from base camp down to the bottom. It's like descending into the belly of the earth.
Exhausted after hours spent climbing down the crater, George finally makes it to the bottom.
Hey, George, y'all good? Just reached the bottom, guys. Copy that. Talk to me if you need to.
There are few places on planet Earth that are more desolate, dangerous. It feels almost like setting foot on a new planet. And with that suit, feeling very much like an astronaut, you walk over to the edge of the lava. It gets louder and louder, and it sounds like the devil's washing machine. The lake of lava is about 60 or 70 meters across. And from the point at the very edge where I'm standing, it's a 20-meter drop straight into liquid rock. 2 more steps, sploosh. And just look out on the waves, literal waves of liquid rock crashing against the side. It makes the sound like being at the beach, but deeper. You could probably count on one hand the number of people that have stood in that spot.
For 30 minutes, George explores the crater, unaware of ominous rain clouds rapidly forming around the volcano. Although George's team members were aware of the rain,
Hey, George.
they were unaware of its effect.
What's up, guys? We got some rain here at base. You might want to consider coming back.
When you're at the bottom of the crater, you can't see the horizon, so there's no way for you to know if there's bad weather coming.
It's getting pretty heavy, George. I'd recommend you come back. All right, headed back up. Copy that.
The rain had started, and it wasn't just a light drizzle, it was starting to really come down.
Rain that falls through volcanic gas clouds can be as corrosive as battery acid, causing serious damage to anything or anyone it touches.
This acid is so destructive that it will eat away at all kinds of materials. Within a matter of minutes, I could see the coating on my aluminum heat suit starting to slough off because of the acidity. Now I'm thinking, great, I have to ascend through this rain. And this is going to be nothing but awful for the next 2 hours, because there's no shortcut. If anything goes wrong at the bottom, you might as well be on the summit of Everest. You might as well be on another planet, because nobody is going to come to rescue you. I go to start my ascender, and the starting cable comes off in my hand. Here I am, 1,200 feet down, and my only means of egress has now split in two. And the string on the starter cord was damaged by the acid.
The starter cord on George's gasoline-powered ascender is his lifeline. Without the ascender, he has no hope of escaping the volcano as toxic rain pours down on him. But fortunately for George, before it broke, the cord did its job.
Guys, you copy?
Copy, George Base.
I got the motor started, but this thing just broke on me. If it stops, I'm done for. You're gonna have to be at the top watching for me, all right?
Copy that, we're on the way.
Luckily, it started on that first pull. Gave it some gas and started walking up as it pulled me.
There's no time to lose. George needs to get out now. And the only way out is straight up, outside and exposed to the acid rain.
It was awful. I was trying to ascend with a broken piece of equipment that, if it had stalled, would have trapped me and stranded me. And meanwhile, the acid rain was still coming down. And I can tell that it's very strong acid rain. Stronger than what we get at base camp, because at the bottom of the crater, there's even more gas above you. So the strength of this acid is unlike anything I've ever experienced.
If you were in the crater and it was raining and there was a lot of gas coming out of the volcano, the rain would be intensely acid. If you were taking pictures with a camera, you would probably fairly quickly notice that the camera would stop working because the camera would start getting corroded. Anything metallic will be ruined. A cell phone will be ruined by this intense acidity, just simply because the acidity is so strong, so elevated.
In addition to acid rain, volcanoes create strange weather in other ways. When lava flows into groundwater, it creates steam explosions, forcing small pebbles or large rocks to shoot into the air, called ballistic projectiles. We are familiar with volcanic ash carried by wind. However, if wind dies down while a volcano is active, gas and other pollutants can create a volcanic smog known as VOG. Drained from the heat and his descent into the volcano, George inches up the 1,200-foot deep crater. His only hope of escape? A motorized lifeline with a broken starter cord.
The last thing in the world I want is for this thing to stall with me on the rope. And I'm thinking, oh, please stop raining. Please don't stall.
As George slowly and steadily ascends the crater, acid rain eats away at his ropes.
Please don't stall. Please don't stall. Please don't stall.
In these brutal conditions, George knows his equipment won't hold out much longer.
There are few things more miserable than being cold, wet, and not just being soaked in water, but being soaked in acid. When the raindrops hit your face, it starts to burn your eyes and sting your skin, and you taste that acrid, metallic flavor in your mouth. It was painful. My eyes were stinging. And I wear contact lenses. So it makes things even more difficult for me. I'm worried about my rigid, gas-permeable contact lenses literally dissolving inside my eye sockets. So I'm trying to wipe my eyes when I can and trying to keep the machine from stalling.
Come on! Finally, after 3 agonizing hours, George makes it to the upper rim of the volcano and safety.
By the time I got to the top, I was soaked to the bone. All my gear was busted, but it felt so good to get back to base camp, knowing that I was alive.
If I were going to visit a lava lake at an active volcano, the first thing I would do is make sure somebody knew where I was going. And in terms of acid rain, which I think is a very interesting problem in this case, knowing the weather patterns is very important as well. And so you would choose the time of the year, which is the driest to go. There still will be a chance of rain, but the probability will be lower.
Wow. This was a serious malfunction, bordering on catastrophic.
Believe that?
All it takes is a few things to compound together to create an absolute tragedy. There was a good chance that I could have to spend hours trapped in one of the most inhospitable places on Earth. This is a place that is not conducive to human life. I've actually done several expeditions again back to that exact crater. However, we take a few more precautions now.
I'm about 30 meters away from the lake of lava. I gotta put my heat suit on.
And I'll probably go back there again.
Strange weather, like acid rain, is created by the random mixture of a volcanic eruption colliding with a rainstorm. And just as bizarre is when winds combine with mountains. They accelerate out of control and literally rip trees out of the ground. When you think of Idaho, you don't usually think of strange weather. But being only 350 miles from the Pacific Ocean, its mountain ranges are positioned perfectly to trap severe weather systems, and sometimes bizarre events can occur. There's an expression that residents of Idaho are known to say: if you don't like the weather, just wait 15 minutes. However, 15 minutes can lead to strange and life-threatening weather. Benjamin Earwicker's love of the outdoors began when he was 7 and continues today. He's traveled to 37 different countries, and he's hiked through most of them.
I'm an avid backpacker and hiker ever since I grew up in the mountains of Central Oregon in the Pacific Northwest. I love being in the outdoors. I love being in the backcountry whenever possible. Well, wind is something that I think about whenever we pick a campsite. I try to find shelter so that we're protected from the wind, because in the middle of the night, if we're out in a flimsy ultralight tent, the wind can really change the dynamics. It can actually be quite dangerous if there are trees nearby. I think I'm educated by both experience and by taking the time to prepare myself to be in the backcountry and in these situations that are oftentimes unpredictable. I try to prepare myself so that I know what I'm up against, so that I'm prepared in the event that something goes wrong.
Oh, it's recording.
Oh, hi.
So this is our sleeping quarters for the night.
So I've hiked and backpacked on 5 different continents in 30+ countries around the world, and I know how to handle myself in a range of situations and weather patterns, except this one time.
Go!
So in terms of the interaction of wind and complex terrain, what we can sometimes see happening is in areas of higher elevation, when the winds sort of line up near the surface and aloft from one direction, it's a very stable situation. Those winds can then sink suddenly as they come down through a steep valley or the lee side of a mountain. The winds can accelerate as they go down the slope, pick up speed as they go for at the base of the valley when those winds hit. Again, could be a very dangerous situation.
Scientists have long been perplexed as to why in cyclone winds, trees are not pulled out of the ground. Studies have confirmed that there is a magic breaking point. Literally, only after wind speeds of 90 miles per hour do trees break, no matter what their size or diameter.
In terms of trees falling down in the wind, yes, this is something that can happen. A lot depends on the type of tree. Shallow-rooted trees in wet soil can be much more susceptible to being knocked over by strong winds, whereas more deeply rooted trees in somewhat harder soil, it's going to take stronger winds to damage them.
Oh, man. I can't wait.
June 2012. It started as a fun adventure.
Yeah, I agree.
Benjamin planned a 32-mile hike in the mountains near Crooked River with his good friend.
I currently live in Boise, Idaho, which is about 2 hours south of the Crooked River area. Crooked River's in the central mountains of Idaho. Former mining town, a lot of beautiful mountains. So this was a trip that was just really close to home. Nothing exotic, nothing out of the ordinary. Just a nice, easy weekend backpacking trip. So we thought. When we looked at the weather forecast, it was projected to be sunny, maybe a little bit of precipitation, but nothing out of the ordinary. So we thought this was a great weekend to go up and do some biking, do a little hiking and camping.
Where are we going?
And we stashed our mountain bikes so that we could find them later and they'd be protected.
We're about right here.
Then our plan was to do a 13-mile loop back to the bikes.
Oh, okay, yeah, that shouldn't be too far then.
And then go on the rest of the loop on bike. So we dropped the bikes, we drove down, parked the car, and started out on our trip. Beautiful day, not a cloud in the sky.
Although there was not a cloud in the sky, this was Idaho, and in 15 minutes, the weather could totally change.
At that point, we had been hiking for about 4 or 5 hours, so we had made it up over the first ridge. We're not worried about anything. I can see the clouds starting to build in the distance, and we thought, well, we might get a rain shower later tonight, but it's far enough away that we weren't too worried at that point.
It'll get better by the time we keep walking.
We're enjoying kind of a meandering hike along the forested hills, the ponderosa pines. Just a beautiful day in central Idaho. So the area we were hiking in is filled with a lot of different fir trees and pine trees, but ponderosa pines are one of the striking features of this part of the country. Ponderosa pines are a very large, sturdy pine. They can often be 60 to 80 feet tall.
You know about those bugs that eat the trees, some sort of insect.
Oh, really?
And all of a sudden, I heard a huge ponderosa pine fall down.
What was that?
Fortunately for us, the tree fell in the opposite direction, toward the hill on the opposite bank. But had it faced us, it would have easily spanned the Crooked River at that point. And all of a sudden, the wind starts to pick up. And pine needles start to blow at us down this canyon. And debris is being kicked up by this wind, and it increasingly grows within about a 5 to 10 minute period. Those clouds that we had seen in the distance, were becoming more and more ominous, billowing up, much larger than before and getting closer.
True to Idaho's weather patterns, within 10 minutes, unexpected wind has entered the downslope of the valley. The winds haven't just shown up, they have sped up.
Within about 30 seconds of the first tree falling, we heard a second and then a third tree fall around us. The hair stood up on the back of my neck. I was prepared for just about any other weather condition, rain, snow, thunder shower. But when the wind started picking up and throwing debris at us, I thought something's different this time.
The backpackers decide to seek immediate shelter.
What's going through my mind is the thought that this is a powerful wind enough to knock over a tree. What happens if another tree falls directly on us? I could barely keep my eyes open because of all the dust and debris that at this point was swirling around us. So it wasn't just gusts of wind blowing debris every couple of seconds. This was a circular, powerful wind that was pushing us forward on the trail. And we knew in that instant that we had to find shelter, and we had to find shelter fast.
With trees crashing all around, finding shelter fast was not going to be easy.
We thought, where do we need to go to be protected from the trees? So we thought the only place that we can see is the creek bed itself.
Well, you don't see wind, but the dangerous thing about these strong wind events is what you're seeing is what the wind has picked up. Bits of trees. You're not seeing the wind, but you're seeing physically what that wind may have picked up, and it's really that flying debris that causes the concerns for injuries and death.
So we get down next to this ledge, down by the river, and as we're doing that, we're hearing trees still falling into the river. And we're finally feeling like, okay, we made the right decision. We've got out of harm's way. The trees are still falling, but at least if they fall on us, we're protected. And then I start to hear kind of a rustling in the shale and in the rocks. And there's a coiled up rattlesnake hidden in the rocks about arm's length from me at that point. Coiled up, potentially ready to strike. At this point, the car is probably 8 to 9 miles away. Our bikes are at least 6 miles away. So we had no easy solution to get out of there. And at this point, we knew that we couldn't go back where we came from because our path had been blocked by the falling trees. Our best bet at this point was to find a large boulder or a rock face that we could then shelter next to. The wind is still howling, the trees are still falling down. So we find a rock outcropping in the distance. And right as we're heading towards this rock, we look up, and in the same spot that we're headed is a small brown bear. We could hear the bear and perhaps another bear calling to one another, making noises to signal their location. So the sound I heard was kind of like a low growl, kind of like a ruh, ruh. But in that moment, we didn't have a choice because we couldn't stay there. The wind is howling, the trees are falling, and we have to get shelter under this rock.
What we find is animals in some cases have that sixth sense, the realization that there's a forest fire nearby and they're evacuating that area, the realization that there could be a storm brewing, perhaps a change in atmospheric pressure is causing those animals to move to another area. So there does seem to be some innate ability within Mother Nature to recognize the advance of a storm.
So at this point, we make a run for it. And we take off sprinting down this path, and we make it past where we heard the low growling sound from the bushes to a granite slab.
Hey, over here. I think we're good here.
And we decided that at that point we needed to find shelter there and perhaps stay there the night. We were under the granite slab for at least 9 hours.
Oh, jeez.
I had thoughts of whether or not we would even make it out of this situation. The danger to us physically was very real. It was very tangible, palpable. I felt that one or both of us could be injured or killed by these falling trees. This was a pretty restless night for me. The storm continued to brew over time. I would say the wind died down after probably 2 to 3 hours, but then we would have gusts of wind all night long. Most of that time, I was just listening and waiting and hoping that a tree wouldn't fall. So the next morning when we were able to hike out, we stopped counting fallen trees that had fallen across the path after 40 or 45 trees. What I've learned from this experience is that no matter how well prepared you are, you have to expect the unexpected. You have to be prepared for what you can't possibly imagine. This is the wilderness. Weather is unpredictable. We can't control what's going to happen no matter what the weather forecast says. So now when I backpack, when I'm out in the wilderness, I'm thinking about what are the weather conditions, what is the wind going to do, and how will that impact my choices. So the interesting thing about wind, you can't touch it, you can't see it. It's kind of one of those ethereal things that happens when you're out in nature. We don't think about wind. It's one of those things that happens to you or that you can't really see. You see its impact.
Go, go.
And that was the weather event that I will never forget.
Rain mixed with gases can be deadly. Wind mixed with nature can be catastrophic. Mix rain and wind together, and add a rare phenomenon that only Mother Nature can explain, and you have a recipe for disaster. Nebraska is a common state for tornadoes in the United States, sitting right in the middle of Tornado Alley, with an average of over 60 tornadoes a year, 19 in the month of June alone. Between June 16th and 18th, 2014, this area was hit by 76 tornadoes, and once 2 tornadoes at the same time. A rare phenomenon called twin tornadoes hit the small town of Pilger, Nebraska. Population 350. Gene Willers was the president of the local bank. He has lived his entire life in this state and has witnessed tornadoes since he was a young boy.
My name is Gene Willers. I'm a retired bank president. I've been in banking most of my life. In a village such as Pilger, we don't have a lot of turnover. Our location is a small location. We have 7 employees. I think of my staff as family. Pretty close relationship. You care about each other. It's an important part of it. I guess I'm here talking about weather, not as an expert, but as someone that's lived through it. Growing up on a farm in Nebraska, we watch the weather. It's just part of our makeup. And so we take storm warnings very seriously. We always are aware of our surroundings as far as our weather and where we can take shelter, those type of things. I was thinking the other day, how many tornado warnings have I been through? Somewhere around 30. I'm not a stranger to tornadoes, no. But this is one I'll never forget.
Gene may not have been a stranger to tornadoes, but this day was going to bring a rare phenomenon: twin tornadoes.
A twin tornado are two tornadoes, separate tornadoes, but they originate from one supercell thunderstorm.
Normally, one tornado is formed from one supercell. Scientists know how tornadoes are formed. However, they still don't know why some thunderstorms produce tornadoes and why others do not.
A twin tornado is very rare. On average, studies have shown that maybe you will see every 10 to 15 years one supercell thunderstorm produce two separate tornadoes. But we don't have a lot of data on twin tornadoes to begin with. For all we know, they're probably even more rare, upwards of 30, maybe even 40 years.
June 16, 2014. It was like any other working day for Jean. With one last appointment to attend in a neighboring town, Jean was looking forward to a game of golf after work. Little did Jean know that this typical day was just the calm before the storm. ×2.
I made a tee time at the Stanton Golf Course, which is about 10 miles to the west. When I saw the weather in the morning on television, it indicated that we were in a moderate risk area. After I left the meeting mid-afternoon, I could see that things were developing, that we were probably going to have some thunderstorms. And so I called and canceled the tee time.
No, golf's not going to happen today.
Instead of going home, I decided just to drop by the bank and tidy up a few things and then go home. There was possibilities of some sightings. It was concerning. As I came closer to Pilger, it was getting worse. It was muggy. Clouds were spinning quite a bit, and that's a little bit unusual. You just don't see that very often. That was a sign of things to come.
A distracted Jean leaves his cell phone in his car and heads into the bank. Jean arrives back at the bank shortly before closing.
Afternoon.
Was going to pop in for 15 minutes and then go. There were a couple matters that I wanted to take care of and talk to employees about. Most of the weather stations in Nebraska offer storm alerts that will come on your cell phone. About that time, the employees, at least 3 or 4, had alerts, and you could just hear them going off like all over the place. And I think one employee actually had a National Weather Service alert on theirs. You know, I was in my office, I heard these warnings going off, and they were almost all simultaneous, you know, so I looked out the window, you know, and saw that it had gotten worse. It was getting darker. One of the employees took a call, and it was from a storm spotter. They had spotted a tornado southwest of Pilger heading our way.
Okay. No, you have to stay here. Everyone, gather around.
It was too late for the employees to leave.
We don't have time to go home.
And our emergency plan calls for using the vault as the storm shelter.
I got my grandkids.
I knew that was going to be the safest place for them to be.
The safest place is in the vault. We've got to get in there now.
One of the people in the bank that day was a repairman for our bank vault company. I asked him if the door could be locked from the inside, and he indicated to me, no, it can't be locked from the inside.
Realizing someone had to stay outside the vault to lock the door, Bank President Gene Willers takes charge and delegates the staff, possibly for the last time.
And I just said, get in the vault. And they could see the look on my face. They were not going to question it. So they went in the vault.
You'll be safe. I'll be fine. I'll be fine. Everyone, stay there. Stay safe.
2 employees from the accounting office, the vault repairman, and then the employees that were there. I'm usually a fairly laid-back guy, but you get to the point you feel kind of like I don't want to say captain of the ship, but You know, for lack of better term, somebody has to take responsibility to see that everyone's safe. I'm a family man. I've always felt that way about my family, and they were my family too.
And as captain of the ship, Gene made the heroic move to save his staff and possibly go down with his ship.
There's a wheel that you turn, but there's also, you spin the tumblers to lock it. And I didn't do that. I latched it and turned the wheel so it was tight. I was afraid if something happened to me that it would be difficult for somebody to open that door.
We're gonna die in here!
After I had latched the door, I went back to the windows, and at that point I could see 2 tornadoes southwest of town, probably 2 to 3 minutes away. I didn't stay there very long.
Gene made a quick decision based on his experience of tornadoes in the past.
I decided to go down the steps into the crawl space.
You're not dealing with just one funnel cloud. Now you're dealing with 2 separate tornadoes, and you cannot predict where a tornado is going. Maybe they're wrapping around each other. Maybe they're going in separate directions from each other. You may have to deal with the first tornado that comes and impacts your area. You may not even know that a second one is directly behind it.
Gene goes into survival mode.
So I went into the crawl space underneath the bank. At about that time, the electricity got cut. I could hear the siren going, but other than that, it was just eerily silent. I'm a man of faith, so I prayed. At this point, when I realized we're going to get a direct hit, I pretty well had decided I wasn't going to survive. My thoughts were, I hope I made the right decision with the ball. My wife, how's she gonna do without me? The children, grandchildren, those type of things. I didn't have my phone, so I couldn't communicate with her. In essence, I was alone, very alone. I started just hearing kind of rumbling. The air pressure was changing, so I knew it was coming.
With speeds up to 200 miles per hour, this was going to be bad.
At that point, when I started feeling, ears popping, those type of things, I knew we were gonna get hit. It was like 2 freight trains hitting head on. That's how loud it was. It was very loud at that point. The floor above me was being sucked up somewhat, just bouncing, and so I knew we were getting a direct hit. It probably wasn't that long of a time, but it seemed like forever.
It took only 81 seconds for the twin tornadoes to take down the bank and the town of Pilger.
Longest 81 seconds that ever happened, I think, in my mind. There was debris on the steps. I had to clear that out to get up the steps. And I didn't realize the extent of the damage till I got up the steps.
It appears Gene is the only one that survived.
Because that floor had been pulled up somewhat, there were a lot of things laying around, desks, chairs, debris everywhere. and it looked like World War III outside of the bank.
Half the bank was now gone. But what about Gene's staff? Were they gone as well?
I had no idea what kind of condition the people were, and I couldn't hear them. And as I pulled the door open, they were all more or less huddled together in the back of the vault.
Is everyone okay? Come on, come on.
They came out, did a little hugging. Everybody it was just a flood of relief.
It's insane. It is crazy.
The only part of the bank that remained was the vault was supporting the north half of the ceiling, but that was about it. I mean, it was totally destroyed.
What remained of the bank's structure was deemed unsalvageable. Machines were brought in to tear it down completely.
We did have 2 deaths from the storm. That was tragic. You always, in the back of your mind, you wonder how you react in situations, you know. And I think I reacted well and responsibly. And I think the community, and especially my employees, feel good about what I did. And I thank God for his protection. I guess this storm had quite an impact on my life. I was 1 year from retirement, and I needed to stay on longer, so I spent another extra year and a half working to replace the bank. Also, the community was about 75% destroyed. The storm itself has changed the whole makeup of the community. Typical small rural community made up of a lot of older people, rental houses. Those people all left. So the population is probably 40% lower than it was. The downtown area was totally wiped out. I was recognized by the Red Cross, and every year Iowa and Nebraska has a rivalry football game. It's called the Heroes Game. And I was recognized there along with an individual from Iowa, and which I was appreciative. People really need to take these situations seriously. It's an awful thing. It's something that you can't describe. It's something to be avoided at all costs. I think the reason that this receives so much coverage is because 2 tornadoes of that magnitude side by side is really rare.
Tornadoes.
Here comes the tornado.
They twist. They turn. They kill. These are the stories from people who work in extreme weather.
We just lost a big window.
It was just like a bomb went off.
And nobody is coming to save you.
And the storms they'll never forget.
Wham! Crack! Bang! Bang! Bang!
Holy we're going to die.
Plus, the how and why behind the world's worst weather.
Mother Nature is one mother.
The state of Nebraska is no stranger to tornadoes. Located within the infamous Tornado Alley, Nebraska gets 57 tornadoes per year on average.
Tornadoes are something that we've been studying for a long time. They occur in what we call tornado belts, in a sense, areas where there's a predominance of tornadoes. Well, the scientists for predicting tornado formation is that you look for the conditions in the atmosphere where it is, first of all, very warm, enough moisture, and unstable in the sense that there is vertical motion happening.
Storm chaser and tornado tour guide George Karunas has been chasing tornadoes for over 20 years.
It is impossible for me to add up the number of days, weeks, months, miles that I have traveled. It's typical for me to live like a nomad, crisscrossing the Great Plains of the United States for 4 to 6 weeks every springtime. In all of my years of storm chasing, I've seen a lot of flying debris, things being thrown through the air by tornadoes, but this was a close call.
As a tornado chasing tour guide, George Karunas gives clients an up-close and personal view of these destructive weather monsters. Each spring, he spends 2 weeks at a time chasing tornadoes, with clients along for the extreme ride.
I'm gonna jump out and get a shot of this.
Every spring, I disappear and head to Oklahoma, Kansas, Texas, Nebraska, and literally just go where the wind takes me. We have to try and forecast where the storms are going to be, and then drive to maneuver to get into position to where we think the storms are going to form. If you're lucky, a storm will go up, you chase it, you try to navigate around the roads, and if you're really, really lucky, you'll see a tornado.
May 12th, 2013. It's Mother's Day. George and his clients get ready for what they hope will be an epic storm chasing day.
Thank you. It's the early morning. We're putting our weather forecast together. We realize that there's potential for some storms later in the day. I've gathered together all the guests from the tornado tour, and I'm ready to give them a briefing. But it's Mother's Day. What do you have to do on Mother's Day? Call Mom. So I'm on the phone with my mother.
I know, Mom.
The conversation was a typical Mother's Day conversation. Hey, how you doing? Everything is good? But then she said something that was a little unusual. She said that she was particularly concerned for my safety today.
I know, Mom. It's not my first rodeo.
So I thought it was weird that she said that.
Little did George know, but his mother's instinct about Mother Nature may have been correct.
So I hang up the phone with my mom. We do our weather briefing, let everyone know what's going on for the day, and then we pile into the vans and head towards our target area, which happens to be in south central Nebraska this particular day.
Nebraska is a huge trigger for tornadoes due to its dry lines, a separation of moist and dry air. When these two fronts collide, air rises and storms develop.
Chasing tornadoes is all about gambling your knowledge versus the curveballs that Mother Nature is going to throw you. So we do a very sophisticated analysis of all the computer weather models. We look at satellite data, we look at radar data, and we develop a target area. And as the day progresses, the weather information gets better and better. So we're able to narrow our target down as the day goes on. The computer models are telling us that there is a potential for supercell thunderstorms, that is these giant rotating storms, the ones that are most likely to produce tornadoes.
When you have certain kinds of events in the atmosphere and there's, say, a cold front coming through or a warm front, you'll create, let's say, convective cells of storms here and here and here and here, what we call a supercell. It will be much more intense, more super. Unfortunately, that means more devastating, usually, than an ordinary cell.
We get people join us on these chases from all over the world. Folks from Canada, the US, all over England and Europe, people from Australia and New Zealand, weather enthusiasts, the kind of people that don't run inside when there's thunder and lightning. We have a sophisticated setup. I'm driving. We have the owner of the tour company, who is also the navigator, in the passenger seat, and then all of the guests are in the back. And we've got cameras set up that are facing back. I've got cameras on the dashboard, because we want to capture every minute of the chase. Late in the afternoon, we have a target storm that goes up in south central Nebraska, and we're able to get in front of it. And we're looking basically down the throat of this supercell, and it is a dark mass along the horizon. You can see a sharp edge, and then it's just nothing but black underneath. This is what we call an HP supercell, a high precipitation, meaning there's a lot of rain coming out of it, and that can make it extra dangerous. If there's a tornado embedded in that rain, you could be hit by it and not even see it coming. The fact that this storm was a high precipitation type really upped the danger level. So I really wanted to make sure that I gave this storm a wide berth.
As George and his guests head into the storm, the sky becomes black. It looks mean. A few miles away, they spot a tornado in the distance.
Is that the tornado there?
That is it.
Their clients in the back seat are thrilled. This is what they came for. The team decides they've got to pick up the pace to get ahead of the storm.
We were getting into a tricky situation. I was on a dirt road with this monster storm bearing down on us that is about to dump a ton of rain. It had just been issued with a tornado warning, and I couldn't tell if there was a tornado wrapped up in all that rain. I'm there to chase the storms and bring these paying customers to come and see them as well. But the #1 priority is keeping everyone safe. We see it produce a small tornado on the horizon, and it's starting to accelerate. This storm is getting closer and closer to us. And we know that the road that we're on, this dirt road, is probably going to turn into mud in a matter of minutes.
It's coming right at us right now. We're going to need to turn around.
We turn the van around and start blasting out of there. And then things get really hairy.
Located within the infamous Tornado Alley, the state of Nebraska gets an average of 57 tornadoes per year. May 12, 2013. A full-on tornado is forming, and tornado tour guide George Karunas has just entered the supercell storm, taking his passengers along for what may be a dangerous ride.
At this point, the storm is probably moving about 40 miles an hour, so I have to really hit the gas to try and stay ahead of it because we know we're going to get engulfed by the heaviest rain and hail. Being in front or in the path of a tornado is extremely dangerous. If you see a tornado and it's not moving left and it's not moving right, it just looks like it's getting bigger, guess what? It's coming straight for you. The biggest problem with tornado chasing is the unknown. You can try and predict where this tornado is going to go, but they don't always go where you think they're going to go, and the roads don't always cooperate. One of the most dangerous part about chasing a storm that can produce a tornado is not the tornado that you can see. It's the tornado that you can't see because it's either wrapped in rain or it's forming right on top of you. And that's exactly what happened this day.
And what George couldn't see, all of a sudden reared its ugly head.
And then out the side to our south, somebody spots a tornado touching down very close to us in the field. I can't see it because I'm driving. And here's the thing about tornadoes. Tornado is a rotating column of wind, not necessarily cloud. So you could have a swirling mass of debris that doesn't look like much, but it's a tornado. That's exactly what happened on this day in Nebraska. We see to the south the tornado. I'm driving east. We know the storm is moving northeast. That puts that tornado on a perfect trajectory to intercept us. The chaser has become the chased.
Look at that. Oh man, it's coming in quick.
Do we try to outrun the tornado? Do I try to put on the brakes and let the tornado pass? You have seconds to make really important decisions, especially because you've got a van full of people who are in your hands and you're responsible.
We need to get out of here. We gotta go.
Really gotta get out of here, man. Let's go.
Every minute you're making dozens of very important decisions that could be life or death.
Make sure you got your seatbelts on right now.
And at this point, all we can do is try to outrun it. My biggest concern was being rolled over by these winds. I could feel the wind pushing the side of the van, and I'm fighting it as hard as I can. Imagine driving a barn down the road. That's what it's like with one of these big vans.
But George's van isn't the only thing that these forceful winds may roll over.
And it just so happens that we're driving past an irrigation system. This is equipment that farmers use to water their crops. These irrigation pivots, they're basically a long, what looks like a piece of scaffolding with wheels that a farmer will set up in the middle of their field, and then it rotates around. If you've ever been flying over the central US and you look down out of the airplane and you see those circles for crops, that shows you where they've been using these irrigation circle equipment. One of these is parked parallel to the road, and I'm trying to get ahead of this storm now.
We just gotta move.
I'm holding the steering wheel with all of my strength.
Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going.
I'm just bracing against the wind, flooring the gas. The tornado now starts to push this piece of farm equipment over.
You all right?
The end piece could have easily gone through the windshield and into any one of us. Scary stuff.
Everyone okay?
What did you hit?
For that to be blown over the way it was, I can't imagine how strong the winds were. I'm surprised the van didn't roll. The guests in the back, they were fully aware that it was a close call. When you have farm equipment starting to come through your windshield, that's a pretty good indicator that you're in the wrong place. When the dust finally settled and we were able to stop, we got out to do a damage assessment to see how bad this was. It was shocking to see how little damage there was. I was expecting the entire side of the van to be just completely destroyed and demolished. There was very little damage at all, just a broken mirror and a smashed windshield.
Close one, eh? Yeah.
I'm not proud of what happened that day. It was a clear example of being in the wrong place, and we probably should have evacuated out of there much earlier than we did. But it's hard to tell. You can do everything right and still end up in the wrong place. Everyone in that car will remember that day.
Tornadoes are very destructive because they're very intense winds over a relatively small spatial scale, but the wind speeds themselves within a tornado are really horrific, so they can literally blow a building apart.
I know, Mom.
Of course, my mother had warned me earlier in the day that she was particularly worried about my safety. Well, later that evening, that video ended up airing all over the world on the evening news. Mom got to see firsthand how right she really was. Over the years with all of my adventures, I have given my mother a lot of gray hairs. This particular day, she got a few extra. In all of my years of storm chasing, I've seen a lot of flying debris, things being thrown through the air by tornadoes, but this was a close call. It wouldn't have taken much. If I was driving maybe a little bit faster, that farm equipment would have maybe not hit the windshield, maybe come through the side window and taken out one of the paying customers. So that absolutely was the day that weather changed my life.
Tornado winds wreak havoc on everything in their paths as they pick up speed.
Can you hear it?
Almost nothing stands in their way. Potentially more destructive is the tornado's spiraling vortex as it reaches the ground. Anything can be ripped apart or thrown in the air, creating a deadly field of debris.
Tornadoes need, first of all, heat. They have to have the energy. They need moisture. And they need the right combination of the wind, what we call the wind shear. The change in wind as you go from the surface up into the atmosphere, such that it can cause that rotating force.
While most people are seeking shelter from the vortex, storm chaser Tim Baker is trying to get as close to the vortex as possible.
I don't have any noble reason why I chase tornadoes. I mean, I'd like to use my stuff to help for safety and maybe help protect lives, but the reality is I want the adrenaline rush.
Tornadoes on the ground! The tornado's on the ground!
I don't want to just see the tornado from a half a mile away. I want to touch the edge of that thing.
It's a rain-wrapped tornado!
But on this particular day, I was trapped in the path of it with no escape. When you're stuck in a tornado, you're done. I was just waiting to die.
Tim Baker, better known as Tornado Tim, has been chasing storms for over 20 years.
I like to go by the name Tornado Tim because I like chasing tornadoes. That's kind of my passion in life.
For more than 2 decades, Tornado Tim has played cat and mouse with Mother Nature.
Tornado's coming! Tornado's coming!
Outrunning the twists and turns of literally hundreds of tornadoes. But on May 13, 2009, all that came to a dead end. With a population of less than 20,000, Kirksville is a small town in the northwest of Tornado Alley. Over 2,000 tornadoes have torn through Missouri since 1950, and Kirksville and surrounding area have been hit dozens of times.
Tornadoes are something that we've been studying for a long time. They occur in what we call tornado belts, areas where there's a predominance of tornadoes.
Tim begins to check his weather maps and models.
In May of 2009, I was already in Kansas. There was just a slight chance of severe storms the day before, and nothing really happened, so I looked at the weather maps to see where the front has moved, see where the low has moved, see where the jet stream's positioned, because they never stay exactly as the predictions work. So I'm trying to figure out exactly how far north, south, east, west I need to adjust to. You got to be fairly accurate because your first predictions are going to get you in a region where you don't want to be more than 60 miles off target. Because you've got to travel distance when the storms start to fire, and then when the tornado starts to form, you got to be pretty close or it's going to happen and be gone and you won't be there. I chase in the same areas all the time, and I know those roads like the back of my hand. But on this particular day, I was chasing in an area of Missouri I'd never been in before, and that's when things really changed. There was a lot of country, farmish type roads, a lot of turning in the roads that I wasn't familiar with. So this was very unfamiliar territory.
Although he may have been in unfamiliar territory, this did not diminish Tim's ego, as he began to play tag with Mother Nature, a game he normally wins.
Oh yeah, we've got a tornado forming right here, baby.
Today was proving an exceptional day for tornado chasing.
That first tornado that day was great because I was able to watch the tornado come at me.
Very violent tornado.
In fact, I start to see branches and debris falling on top of my car from that first tornado because I was so close.
Debris. We have debris.
I waited to the last second, and I floored it. I mean, you can hear my tires squeal from my car as I'm getting away from it. And I'm playing tag with this first one. Instead of just sitting at a distance and watching it move, I go in and I tag it. I touch the outer fields of the tornado winds. And then I punch away, get away from it. And then I wait for it to catch up to me again, and I come in and I touch the outer edge of it. And experience that and then get away from it. There's nothing like it. Seeing a tornado is one thing, but I want to experience it, and I'm experiencing that tornado. I mean, let's face it, I am Tornado Tim. So playing with a tornado is part of me. It's part of my identity.
Tim may know who he is. Unfortunately, he doesn't know where he is.
I'd never been in that area, so I didn't know what to expect. It's very windy and it's hilly. So the winding roads, the trees, was making it difficult for me to know exactly where I was in the position of the direction of the tornado. I couldn't tell sometimes if I was going north, south, east, or west. So it was making that really complicated.
The last thing anybody wants when they are in the path of a killer tornado is to not know their surroundings in order to plan an escape route.
Tornado is tailing me.
I came into Kirksville and I could see that tornado heading straight for this subdivision. The lights go out. There's power flashes. You see the tornado ripping up the power poles. So like any time you get overconfident, you start to make decisions that you probably in a normal, logical sense wouldn't make. I started to turn onto roads that I had never been on before to get directly in the path of a tornado. I can start to hear the wind scream. I realize, all right, I've got to move now. So I start to move into the subdivision. And I thought, I'm going to turn right, drop south of this tornado, and watch it go by me. So I get there, I turn right. And it's a dead end. So the first time in my life, I am trapped in the path of a tornado. And I'm watching it rip stuff apart. I was just waiting to die.
Missouri ranks as one of the top 10 states struck by tornadoes. And May 13, 2009 is no exception. Kirksville, Missouri. Tornado winds are raging at 200 miles per hour. Destruction is everywhere. And storm chaser Tornado Tim Baker is stuck on a dead-end street.
So the first time in my life, I am trapped in the path of a tornado. And I'm watching it rip stuff apart. I thought a million things. I'm thinking, I'm on a dead-end road and I will die here. How stupid was I to do this? My family's gonna have to pick up my body in Kirksville, Missouri, and they don't even know where it is on the map. All these things are just floating through your head. Tornado Tim dies by being killed by a tornado. I'm feeling stupid. And I'm watching that thing come in. I realize the debris from those houses is gonna be thrown into my car.
With nowhere to go, Tim braces for the 135-mile-per-hour tornado and the debris that's flying through the air.
When you hear a warning of a tornado, don't wait for the first warning and think, well, what should I do? What you should probably have is a safe place. It could be part of your basement, something that allows you to get in a place where you're not going to be blown apart.
So I've got my camera faced right outside of the front window, and you just start to see little debris, bigger debris, starting to throw it around. And I'm looking out my window and I see this spinning column of boards and 2x4s and plywood floating coming right at me. It starts to get really close and then the debris gets larger. I see things now starting to slam into my car and then fly over it that are bigger than my car. Entire sheets of plywood, siding, nails, glass, metal, everything is slamming into my car. The car's being rocked. You can just hear the banging happening to my car. All along, I was certain I was going to be picked up, thrown into a tree, and bent around like a pretzel and killed. I was just waiting to die. I actually started uttering, God, I'm really sorry, and I'm in your hands. I'm in your hands, Luke. I'm in your hands. The tornado was probably moving at 35 to 40 miles an hour, and the wind speeds within the tornado were probably 110 to 135 miles an hour. At that point, I pretty much said Mother Nature wins. When you're stuck in a tornado, you're helpless. You're done. Nothing you can do.
The tornado and the debris pass through. And miraculously, Tornado Tim survives.
You know, you asked me what I was thinking when I was sitting in the car and the debris pounding in the car. What goes through your mind as a tornado chaser who's highly experienced and studied severe weather and tornadoes, I'm thinking of all the ways people die in a tornado. All that's going through my mind. I know all the ways I'm potentially about to die.
Subdivision took a direct hit. Right next to me.
The sad thing is people get killed, property's destroyed, people lose a lot of their life savings. 2 people had died from that tornado. There was over a dozen injuries in the town. So it has a negative impact on the town that way, and certainly a lot of people suffer. The next storm chase season wasn't the same after that. There was something in the back of my mind that wasn't letting me get as close. In fact, it was early on the next spring, I was right spot on to get a tornado. I was gonna be right on the edge of that thing. And I got to the outer bands and there was a lot of rain and I stopped. And I thought, I don't want to be trapped like Kirksville again. I'm less likely to turn on an unknown road if I can at least check the maps first. I still chase today and will be chasing till the day I die.
Tornado winds cause catastrophic damage. They demolish any obstacle in their path. They create spinning fields of killer debris. And sometimes they literally suck you into the eye of the storm.
The wind fields around tornadoes are a very curious beast. They are all sucking in towards the tornado, just on the edge of the updraft, which is very strong within these violent thunderstorms. There really is a sucking motion taking debris skyward. The strongest tornadoes have such force behind them, they can actually peel pavement off highways.
Veteran storm chasers and husband and wife team Jeff and Kathy Piotrowski are known for capturing some of the greatest tornado footage in their industry. This power couple's adrenaline not only drives their passion, but drives them into the eye of the storm.
I've been chasing storms for almost 40 years now. Tornadoes, to me, is an extraordinary event for Mother Nature to release its fury and watch it all go from clear skies to the most violent storm on planet is absolutely amazing. This one day, it was the largest, biggest, widest tornado we filmed in 40 years. I knew it was something special and something different that I had never witnessed before. If it gets you and you get sucked in, you're in trouble. You're in big trouble.
Jeff and Kathy are no strangers to tornadoes. Living in Oklahoma, they are all too familiar with Tornado Alley.
Tornado Alley is in the central part of the U.S. where we have to have those perfect ingredients to come together every spring, and that is the Gulf of Mexico sends moisture northward into the Central Plains. We have a strong jet stream coming in from California as the upper winds come out of the southwest, and it brings the dry air out of the desert, out of Arizona to Mexico, and that dry air, hot air will hit the moisture, and it causes thunderstorms to erupt. And if the jet stream's aloft and we got low pressure in the Rockies, then you create a lot of wind shear in the atmosphere. And when that happens, you get the storms to rotate. Before this particular tornado, the average tornado has a certain size and a certain speed. A lot of times they move to the northeast at like 25 miles an hour, and they behave a certain way based on the conditions for that day. But on this particular day, all those rules went out the window, and it did things that we've never seen before. El Reno is just west of Oklahoma City, about 30 miles on I-40.
Yeah.
So the morning of May 31st, we were looking at the data that we knew there was a risk out, a moderate risk.
There it is, yeah. Okay.
And we knew Oklahoma City area was going to be under the gun for significant weather and tornadoes. That morning, we looked at the data, and I said, hey, we're going to go to El Reno. That's kind of going to be ground zero area of where something bad was going to happen. So we knew that. So we left Tulsa around 10 o'clock in the morning. We drive to Oklahoma City. On our way down, we're watching the radar, we're watching satellite, and there's already storms developing in southeast Kansas along the draw line in the front. And we see these things coming together and during the course of the day.
It's getting really ominous looking. The horizon's getting darker and darker. There's the brightness to the west of the dry line, and the clouds are forming from the north to the south also.
So we set up on the northwest side of El Reno, and the storms are developing about 25 miles west of El Reno. There are thunderstorms growing in air mass, kind of like you see on a spring day. You see these big, huge cumulus clouds developing. And I'm watching radar, and I'm watching the storm. And the radar image just gets better, worse But worse, every minute it updates. Every couple minutes we get a new radar image. And I've got hail forming.
Hail forms in storms that produce tornadoes, again, because of that correlation of wind shear and the heat and energy. The shear keeps the storm going. It propels these storms to last an hour, maybe even 2 hours. Hail needs time in the atmosphere to grow. That is why these big tornado producers often produce large hail as well. The hail is produced in the updraft portion of the storm, and it is basically buoyed aloft in this strong updraft in order to create the largest hailstorm.
I can see torrential rain, and the worst sign is the storm is already starting to show the signs. It's starting to rotate and spin, and I've got rotating curtains, which is a precursor before the tornado that the storm is rotating. So it's like a shower curtain in the bathroom. If you pull the curtain around, the rain is just following that wind. And as the storm rotates, the rain follows that rotating curtain. And so I see that on the radar. I see a hook starting to form. And at that point, I say, it's time, we're going after the storm. So it's raining, there's hail, and there's wind. And the storm is getting darker and darker, and it's looking more ominous by the second.
When we're approaching the El Reno storm, the first thing I see is a vortice, and I don't see just one, I see multiple vortices coming down. The vortices are tornadoes. They're the tornadoes that are touching the ground, but they're coming back up, and then another one will come down, and it'll go back up, and then they were just dancing around one another before they formed the main event, the main tornado. I'm knowing that it's going to be a very violent storm.
Almost half of Oklahoma tornadoes occur in May. And May 31st, 2013 will go down in history when the widest tornado ever recorded reared its ugly head in the city of El Reno. Storm chasers Jeff and Kathy Piotrowski are entering the mouth of the beast.
The storm's getting darker and darker, and it's looking more ominous by the second. Now we're heading west on I-40, west of El Reno, and the storm is severe. A severe thunderstorm warning has been issued by the Weather Service.
I knew it was going to be very dangerous, something I was going to have to be very aware of. I didn't have time to be frightened. I had to be really cognizant, very aware of what was going on so I could keep us both safe.
It's not my first rodeo. I mean, after you film about 900 of these, you get a sense of what's going to happen before it happens. But this one had a few tricks up its sleeve.
And for Jeff and Kathy, this tornado was going to use every twisted trick in the book.
Originally, when the storm developed, we were about 20 to 30 miles east of it. But then at the time the tornado was forming, it was only about a quarter mile away from the tornado. Then we went back to the east to get ready for the intercept as the tornado was approaching El Reno. First of all, the storm structure was really amazing. And also the inflow into the tornado, the storm itself, was sustained at 50, gusting to 80 miles an hour. Way in advance of the tornado itself, the inflow was like a hurricane of air rushing into the bottom of the storm. So that in itself caught my attention. Then what caught my attention even more, as the tornadic storm was moving southeast, and as Kathy said, we'd have multiple tornadoes dance around each other. And generally we have multiple tornadoes, not all the time, but sometimes they'll join into one large tornado. And I saw one concentric tornado, it slowed down, and I literally watched it go from southwest to south of me, and it stopped, and it got wider and wider and wider in front of us. And then all of a sudden, it just goes boom, and starts taking off the east. We turn east, it's out Kathy's window, she's watching the tornado, I'm watching the map, and it's a race is on now to stay in front of the tornado, and this tornado is accelerating. It's growing both in width and intensity. And it also starts having other tornadoes start forming ahead of it, tracking, pulling back into this main tornado like a conveyor belt.
The inflow of air pulling back into the main tornado is not the only thing it's going to pull in.
The El Reno tornado was complicated in a lot of different ways. You'd like to be just ahead of the tornado. Like if the tornado's moving northeast, I like to be in front of it, driving north, and then back east, and then north and east, and that's what I did on El Reno Day. That's what kept us safe. So the key thing when staying safe and out of its path of the tornado is we saw it growing in its width and its forward speed. They moved southeast for about 3 to 4 miles. Then the tornado slowed way down. It got much larger. Tornado moved east for about 3 miles, and then it curved and it got really wide and started moving northeast. And then the last 3 or 4 miles, it was really large, and then it shot due north. So it made almost a complete U over about a 10-mile path. And when it made that hook, that hard beam to the left and accelerated, that's when it caught a lot of people off guard.
Generally, you know, large tornadoes move slowly and they're anchored in. However, with the El Reno tornado, there were multiple vortices. There wasn't just that one large tornado. There were several tornadoes going on at the same time under this one mesocyclone.
Jeff makes a life and death decision to hit the gas. But will that be enough to avoid being hit himself?
Rain curtains were rotating around and hiding the monster tornado inside. You knew something bad was back there. And I remember having the accelerator all the way to the floor, maybe doing 60, 70 miles an hour. And I could feel the front of the truck in a 100-mile headwind. I could feel the front of the truck doing this. I could literally feel it coming off the ground.
The chase vehicle gets kind of a lightness to it. You can just feel it.
The tornado is catching us!
And she said a dozen times, we're gonna get sucked into it, we're gonna get sucked into it, we're gonna get sucked into it.
Ah! I knew Jeff was giving it all he could.
Hold on!
I was scared to death.
Oh my God, it got us!
There was about a 5 or 10 second period of time when I looked up with the storm and I saw this huge mass coming and the inflow was so enormous, it felt like any second the entire vehicle was gonna go airborne and I was gonna get shot up to outer space. So yeah, it was scary. It was really scary.
If a car gets sucked into a tornado, you're gonna die.
If it gets you and you get sucked in or you get into that tornado wall of winds, you're in trouble, you're in big trouble. What I did over the next minute or two was going to determine whether we survived or we got chewed up and hit by this big tornado. It was literally down to seconds. And I understood that threat as it was happening, but I didn't like the feeling.
I just felt confident that Jeff was going to pull us out of this.
I think we need to go north.
He makes good decisions continuously when we're out storm chasing, and so I felt confident we were going to make it out.
My sensory, every piece of information 360 degrees around me tells me what the next move I need to make in order to stay alive. You question your mortality when you have this huge, big killer tornadoes that are bearing down on you, and you know horrible things are happening. So you have split seconds to make a decision, am I gonna survive this?
The El Reno tornado was 2.6 miles wide. The moment that I'm looking up through the front windshield and I can see the debris going over, I'm thinking to myself, I may not get out of this one.
So as we're driving away from the El Reno tornado, the steering wheel is actually vibrating. I could feel the wheel vibrating as I'm driving. It's from the ground rumbling. So I've got the front of the truck being picked up and the wheels vibrating, so you know what's behind me is really bad. When the tornado made a hard left turn and went up to I-40, we found ourselves at the I-40 on-ramp, and we, at that point, decided to head east into Oklahoma City.
Keep going, keep going, keep going.
We drove to the city. We were dealing with flash flooding, heavy rain, high winds, but it was on a downhill hillside as far as intensity goes of the overall storm. It weakened. At that point, that was the end of that cycle of that large tornado.
I remember when the El Reno tornado dissipated, just watching this massive wedge as it went to the north, and then as it dissipated, it just looked like it disappeared.
The El Reno tornado was the second widest tornado on record. It was about 2.6 miles wide. It was just a beast beyond words. The lift associated with the updraft that generated the tornado was just incredible. So you have these sucking winds coming in from miles around and feeding this thing, and it just widens with time and becomes the most fearsome looking thing.
There were a number of people killed and injured during the El Reno tornado. Several chasers were killed, and knowing those people really hit us hard, and the community, weather community hard as well.
For me, I'll never forget the El Reno tornado because of the other storm chasers that lost their lives. It just shows me how fragile life can be, and we were really close to something major disastrous happening. And I think of how blessed we are, how fortunate we are that we didn't get caught in this major tornado.
It was a day to remember like no other day, that we barely survived. That's the weather event I will never forget.